This is Doctor Talks, real talk from real doctors on the issues that matter to you most.
Welcome back to our Reversing Mast Cell Activation Syndrome and Histamine Intolerance Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Meg Mill, and today I am joined by the queen of hormones, Dr. Carrie Jones. Dr. Jones has been an internationally recognized speaker, consultant, and educator on women's health and hormones for over 20 years. She was the first medical director of Precision Analytical. That's where I first met her. And she is currently the chief medical officer of New Ethics Formulas and the head of medical education at Metabolic Mentor University. She is a wealth of knowledge in all things hormones. And we're so glad to have you with us, Dr. Jones.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm super honored to be on today's summit.
Well, we are excited to dive in everything hormones, histamine, everything like that. But before we get started, could you just give us a little bit of your background and how you got into this space?
Oddly enough, I grew up in the South. I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, and my health coach or health class or wellness class, whatever you want to call it, whatever we had in like middle school and high school was taught by the football coach. So you can imagine how that went. And I realized very quickly I wanted to be a doctor, but I knew very little about how my own body worked. We weren't really taught that. So by the time I found my way into medical school, I was sort of obsessed selfishly with how do I function? How do my hormones work? What's going on with my friends and my family? And I heard over and over and over again, women say, I didn't really know that. I didn't know that's how that happened. I just assumed it's normal because my mom or my sister has it too, or my best friend does this as well. And the more I dove into hormones, the more it made sense to me. And so I stuck with hormones through medical school, through my residency, in private practice. And of course, as you said, I was with the Dutch test, Precision Analytical, for almost a decade, and just kept getting deeper and deeper into hormones because they're so important. And we're not really taught a whole lot about it. So that's my background.
Yes, well, I know we are not, I mean, it really is amazing that we're just when you think about a gynecologist as someone who you think to go to for your hormones, but I hear over and over again how it's just
Mhm.
like, okay, we're given birth control or you're really not given any answers. And we need more and more people to really look at the hormones. And I think one thing about hormones is they fluctuate your whole life. So it's not something even that is a bad thing. It's just a natural thing, but you always have to be on top of it in
Mhm.
order to keep things balanced as you change too.
And that's definitely a key point. A lot of people, males and females, don't know is that in our cycling years, our hormones change a little bit every single day. Our estradiol, which is an estrogen, our progesterone, and it affects all the other hormones. It affects our glucose, it affects our insulin, it affects our thyroid, it affects our even our histamine. I mean, it affects sort of everything a little bit every day, depending where you are in your cycle. And then we do the transition into perimenopause, where it feels very chaotic. And then we transition completely out into menopause, where everything in our ovarian hormone side drops down. And if you aren't taught this or told this or know this, then definitely parts of your cycle you may feel crazy. Parts of your cycle you may have all these symptoms, and then all of a sudden they go away. And for maybe years, decades, you're thinking to yourself, I always get this, and I don't know why, not realizing it's completely linked to the cycle, to these changing hormones. And so just even understanding that part can help women just feel so much better, so much less, crazier, so much less like something's actually wrong when really just our hormones shifting.
I'll often people say, I feel good 2 weeks out of the month. And I
Yes.
get like, now when I hear that,
Yes.
I'm like, oh yeah, we have a hormone imbalance.
Yes. Yes, we do.
To see that. Well, it is very interesting with this hormone histamine connection. And I think
Mhm.
that people aren't even expecting a lot of times, when you hear histamine, you first think of allergies, and that's what we're kind of trying to share. This affects your whole body,
Yeah.
hormones being one of them. And I know we have the cyclical relationship. So can we dive into first a little bit about how estrogen levels affect histamine and how histamine affects estrogen?
Well, interestingly enough, years ago, I remember posting because I knew this information and I posted on social media and I said, do you ever feel like you come into maybe ovulation or around your cycle and you feel allergic or you feel kind of flu-like or you feel itchy or you like get a headache or your hives flare up. And I was sort of listing all these histamine symptoms that can happen. And I probably had 1,000+ comments of women go, yes, yes, that's me. And then I either get through ovulation or I get through my cycle and it goes away. And I just assumed it was something I ate, or, it was ragweed season, or it was something, something very just generically histamine related. And they said, but it happened cycle after cycle after cycle, or, it happened consistently enough. They didn't realize it was attached to their cycle. And so I realized at that time years ago, oh my gosh, we aren't even, not only are we not taught about our hormones, but just beyond that. So when we go through our menstrual cycle, your estradiol, which is our main estrogen, we have a few estrogens, but estradiol is our main one. And it will, when you get your period, it's nice and low. And then right before you ovulate or release the egg, it goes up really, really high. Think of like being in the city and then you're going to the tippy top of a mountain. Like that's the dramatic rise of estrogen. It's supposed to, that's what's supposed to happen. But for some women, that in an increase in estrogen and estradiol affects their histamine, because estradiol, slows down the rate at which we break down histamine, particularly in foods, but it also uses the same cofactors to get broken down itself. So the cofactors we use, like magnesium or zinc, or there's some people know the supplement SAMe, but we call it SAM, SAM, help break down estrogen, but it also helps break down through one of your other enzymes to break down histamine. So when you have all this estrogen, then what people say is like, oh my gosh, I had a glass of wine and completely overreacted. Or I had, meats and cheese, for a snack and completely overreacted. Or maybe they didn't have any of that stuff and they just feel they completely overreacted with histamine. Now, as we get through ovulation, you release the egg, your estrogen comes down, and then it rises more like a bunny hill. So instead of going up to the top of a mountain, you go up to a bunny hill. And then that drops down before our period. And again, that shift in estrogen and progesterone, because progesterone comes out at that point, the shift in estrogen and progesterone again affects our histamine. On top of that, it's a two-way street. Histamine, as a molecule, can actually go to our ovaries and say, hey girls, make more estrogens. So the ovaries are like, okay, let's do it. And so now we can have excess estrogen than we were planning on making. Our little estrogen factories got dialed up because of the histamine. So now we can't break it down. So it just keeps going back to the ovary factory and say, okay, we'll make more. And now we get stuck in this conundrum of too much estrogen at that point and too much histamine, and we feel terrible. We get all the symptoms, which is not fair.
I know. Yeah. And I started to see the connection a lot with people who have hormonal migraines too, because,
Yes.
when you're
Oh my
looking at
gosh.
that threshold, there's often that estrogen and histamine, we're looking at all the connections. It's like both of them are there. And then you get
Yeah.
that hormonal migraine too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. The hormonal migraine cramps. There are
Mhm.
a lot of receptors in our uterus and in a layer of our uterus. And it's the point of it is for implantation. If you were going to, not everybody wants to, but let's say you want to. And so we need histamine. It's everything's a balance. It's like Goldilocks. And so what happens is estrogen will cause mast cell release, degranulation. So now we have all this histamine and other molecules floating around. And the point is to tell the uterus, hey, if a sperm and an egg meet and they want to implant, you actually need some histamine. You actually need some in that area to do its job. But if you don't want it, then we don't really want all the side effects that go with it. Like, I don't want cramps, like I don't want diarrhea. I don't want any of those things down there. I'm not looking to become pregnant. And so we can also experience symptoms, just as you said, you might feel it just in your head. You might feel it just in your abdomen, or you may feel it kind of all over in your skin. You have itchy skin, or sort of your hives come back. Or worst case scenario, you have all the above. I mean, I'm sure people are listening, nodding their head, going, crap, I have all those things.
Yeah.
That's all of me. Yeah, well, I didn't
Yes.
realize this.
Yes. Well, and I think that is something that is so confusing with
Mhm.
histamine, because you do think, like we're saying, you think of it as allergies, you think of those, but it comes from almost every cell in our body. So we're
Yeah,
starting to see some of these changes.
yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about perimenopause and how this can kind of bring some of the symptoms out more.
Oh, it's so not fair. So as I was saying, the menstrual cycle, so your estrogen and progesterone, pretend you're on a roller coaster. And the roller coaster obviously is very controlled. You're on rails. You can't get derailed. And that's what it's like through your cycling years. So your teens, your 20s into your 30s, you should ideally have a very predictable up-down of estrogen and then down up of progesterone. The roller coaster. When you become perimenopausal, so generally late 30s into your 40s, maybe early 50s, you are shifting, you're doing the opposite of puberty. So in puberty, everything like came online in your brain to get you ready for reproduction and to have a period. And when you're perimenopausal, you unhook everything. You uncouple is what I read a research paper once said. I was like, oh, that's how I feel. That's so not fair. So when you're making this change, this reverse puberty, so to speak, you go off the rails on your roller coaster. And what a lot of women experience is a drop in progesterone. They do not release the egg. They don't ovulate like they should. Or they do release the egg, but the cell quality of their 20s is not the same as the cell quality of their 40s. So the little progesterone factories just, they've been around a few decades and they're not great at making progesterone anymore. And on top of that, the signal to get estrogen is kind of all over the place. So one day you're on the top of a mountain, the next day you're on a bunny hill, the next day you're down at the city level, then you're back up on the mountain, and then you're back at the city, and it's these wild swings. And women feel it. They've got hot flashes and night sweats and brain fog, and their period comes and their period goes, and now their period's super heavy, and then they skip 2 months, and their joints hurt and their ears itch, and all these symptoms happen. And because that estrogen is kind of wild, not out of control, histamine follows suit. Because that estrogen, up and down, is affecting how your mast cells do or don't degranulate. It's affecting how you do or don't break down histamine. It's affecting how you do or don't, balance, so to speak, your immune system, which your mast cells and histamine are a part of. And so with these women who are that much more sensitive or have been really struggling to clear their histamine and clear their estrogen out of their body, feel more allergic or feel more of these histamine symptoms. And they're thinking to themselves, what changed? What happened? I didn't do anything but have a birthday. Like I didn't do anything but turn 45. And all of a sudden I'm getting all these crazy symptoms. I'm so, itchy. I'm so runny. I'm so, my migraines. Carrie, I get my menstrual migraines all the time now. I'm like, I know. I don't know who designed us. I would like to have a word. I know, but this is how they go hand in hand. But there's stuff you can do, thankfully.
Yes. And then do you see some of these, when we're talking about that overload of estrogen, we know goes down. So what you go through menopause, and then do you see a lot of these symptoms start to clear up then, or how do you see postmenopausal women changing?
Definitely. I myself am not menopausal yet. I am perimenopausal, but all my menopausal patients were like, it does get better. Like some of these symptoms, not all of them, but some of them do abate, especially if they didn't know. Like if they didn't find me till after or find you till after, and then they're like, oh my gosh, I unfortunately suffered for 10 or 15 years, got all the way through menopause, and oh, thank goodness, like my hormones are steady. Now they're low, which is a whole other thing to address, but because they have this low steady state, like a roller coaster that just stays flat, then the histamine isn't as out of control anymore. It's not on this wild ride. And those symptoms, they do tell me definitely abate. Because even one of the very first symptoms of perimenopause that I hear over and over again is I can't sleep. I used to sleep and now I can't sleep. I can't fall asleep. I can't stay asleep. And we know histamine is a pretty stimulatory neurotransmitter in the brain. And so when you are in those wild swings of perimenopause, while that contributes to insomnia, or you can't stay asleep or fall asleep, the swings in histamine do as well in the brain. And so just knowing that can be really helpful. We can do something about that. Like, oh my gosh, and you're having these other symptoms. All right, let's address both of these molecules at the same time, both of these hormones at the same time. Because then when you get into menopause, I want you at your best shape. I want you, feeling great, doing great, supported well when all the hormones drop. So then that's the next thing we can support. And so it's kind of a multi-step process, but just understanding, again, I keep going back to saying, like, just understanding, like, you're not crazy. Again, I don't know who designed it, not thrilled, but this is why it's happening. And then there are things we can do to help support it.
Before we get into, because that's what everyone wants to know, what do we
I know,
do?
of course.
Before we get into what do we do, so when you're working with someone with hormones, how
Mhm.
do you start to think there is a histamine issue? Like, how do you start, what do you do to identify, oh, we're having estrogen issues, we're having maybe low progesterone, but we're also having histamine issues?
So a lot of it is symptomatic. I always get a very thorough history, just like yourself, about like what's going on, what are the symptoms you're having. And a lot of times they tell me the symptoms without even realizing it's hormonally attached. And so, or I will just straight up ask them, knowing they're having a lot of hormone issues, I will say, do you get headaches? Oh, yes, I get headaches. Do your headaches, are they cyclical? Do you have them every day? Do you have them twice a month? Can you tell if they're around ovulation or your period? For the women who don't track, I'm like, let's start tracking some of these symptoms. Get an app, they're free, a period tracker app. Like, let's start to track this stuff. And for the women who are spot on and can tell me, oh my, Carrie, I get a migraine at ovulation, or I get a migraine right before my cycle. Okay, do you feel like sick or flu-like before you're cycled? Or do you feel allergic at all before you're cycled? Do you feel itchy, runny nose? And I just sort of run through some of the histamine symptoms. And if they're like, yes, mind reader, how did you know? I'm like, okay, let's talk about histamine. And a lot of women do tend to show up with some lab work already having done maybe by their OBGYN or primary care. And so I may, just as a cheater method, look at the CBC, the complete blood count, look at their eosinophils, and see if they're outright high or even on the high end of normal, the basophils, and just to get an idea of like, this is really starting to look histamine like to me based on the symptoms without even spending any money, just going by symptoms and some like quick cheater tests. I can go, you know what? And if they've done their estrogen, if they've done their hormones and their progesterone, like sometimes again, they come in with it, then I can evaluate from there and go, oh, and your estradiol is higher and your progesterone is lower. So you're already out of balance there. You're already out of balance in your symptoms. You're already out of balance in some of your other blood work. Like, I think we have a solid case here. Let's go forward.
Yes. Yeah. It always is a surprising question when people are wanting to talk about hormones and you're saying, are you congested? Are you,
Right.
and they're like, why are you asking me
I
that?
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It fits together. There,
Yes.
there are
Yes.
reasons that we ask these questions.
Or they're
Yeah.
allergic people. I mean,
Mhm.
definitely they are in the allergy season, seasonal allergies or maybe food allergies, sensitivities, intolerances. And so to them, it's nothing new. To them, they're
Mhm.
thinking, I'm just an allergic person. Like, oh my gosh. And in the springtime, I'm a hot mess. And if I eat these certain foods, I'm a hot mess. And I'm in and out of antihistamine medications or supplements or what have you. So to them, it's their normal, especially if it runs in the family. And so when I'm trying to tie it into the hormones, I see all these light bulbs go on of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize the hormone imbalance could make the histamine part, the allergic part, so much worse, and vice versa. And if we can empty that bucket, right, bring it all down and get it all in rhythm, oh, they can feel so much better.
Yeah, that is a great point because I think there's a lot of things, and I think the allergy symptoms are one of them that are just normalized. Like
Yes.
people just think, oh yeah, that's something I have, that's something I've had my whole life, and you normalize like that it's just part of you rather than realizing like, oh, I don't have to feel this way.
Even in the springtime, or depending where your allergies are, I would ask women either when I educate on stage or when I'm talking to patients and clients in the springtime, as an example, is your PMS worse? Are your migraines worse? Like, can you look back? Can you ask your family or your partner, hey, has anyone noticed? And it's amazing to me the number of women that go, hold on, wait a minute. Yes. Yes, I have terrible migraines in the spring, and it's usually around my cycle. Or my gosh, yes, my PMS is 10 times worse in the spring. I just, and they'll maybe associate like, I just thought it was because I was run down. I was constantly a sniffy, snotty mess. Whatever antihistamine medication I was taking or trying to do, or I just thought it was stress. I didn't realize it was just adding more to the bucket. Like the water was overflowing, and it overflows vice versa into the hormone symptoms. So maybe they don't have PMS in December, January, February, where nothing grows, depending where you live. But then when you add more seasonal allergies, environmental allergies that set off the histamine, their mast cells, the hormones, the estrogen and the progesterone are at war almost with the histamine. Like, get out of my bucket,
Yeah.
and then and
Yes.
then they get all these symptoms, and vice versa. The histamine's like, well, you're releasing, like you're encouraging my release, and so I've heard that so many times. And same for foods when people say, I just thought it was a GI issue, or I thought, I just thought I couldn't have red wine or cured meat or, something with histamine, obviously histamine ever again. And then I'll say, this is going to sound weird, but have you ever noticed, like, leading up to your period or after your period? And some women have. Some women were like, oh yeah, I can't have a glass of wine leading up to my period. I'm sneezy, snotty, itchy, hivey, headachy, the whole thing. But then after my period, for some reason, I can have a glass of wine. I'm like, ooh, not for some reason. It's the whole system is connected. And I'm not trying to advocate for red wine consumption. However, for people who want the occasional glass, it all ties together.
Yes. Yeah. Because before they understand the bucket, then they
Yes.
think, oh, it's very confusing because it's like, oh, sometimes I can have a glass of red wine, but sometimes I can't. But then they
Yeah.
start to think, oh, the red wine's like not the issue. I mean, but it is a piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
When you sometimes have it and you sometimes don't, it's hard to pinpoint if that specific thing does bother you or not.
Yep. Yep. And especially if nobody has taught you it's in relation to your cycle. Like, we just
Hmm.
don't, for the longest time, decades and decades, hundreds of years, we were left out of research studies, women were, because the researchers didn't want to account for where we were in our menstrual cycle. And on the one hand, I can't blame them, because it would be tough to wrangle in, even if you had a small study of 30 women, it's kind of hard to wrangle us in of like where you are in your cycle, and then what you do with whatever the treatment is for a controlled study. But imagine having a study of 1,000 or 10,000 women, and now you're like, dang it, I have to control for all the menstrual cycle. So for a long time, we were not taught to include our cycle in anything. It was more kind of the bane of our existence, and all the commercials on TV tell us it's awful. And for some women, it is really awful. And so therefore, we don't think it through. We don't know to think it through when it relates to our health and the rest of our health and how it interacts with all of our systems. And so just even understanding that is so empowering, honestly. I want us to know, like, having a menstrual cycle is 100% what makes us us, and we have to keep it in consideration.
Yes, yep, I totally agree. We're going to just pause here for just a moment. I hope everyone has found this interview with Dr. Jones insightful and helpful on your health journey. If you are a Summit purchaser, stay right here because we're going to dive deeper into what we do to fix this problem when it comes to the histamine and hormones. And if you're not a Summit purchaser, you can actually click the button on this page to get continuation of this interview and all of the other interviews of the whole summit. So we hope you found this helpful in your health journey. And if you're still watching the continuation of this talk, thank you for being a valuable member of our community. Now, let's get into a little bit of where you would start.
Where would I start? Yes. So first and foremost, a lot of it, like I said, thorough intake. A lot of people probably have been nodding along. They recognize they have a lot of these symptoms. Maybe they're going to go back and talk to their practitioner about what's going on. Number two is I do like to do testing. I do like to see where, as an example, that estradiol and that progesterone is. Now, we're very specific on the testing. If you still have a cycle, you're a fairly regular cycle, we're going to test you about 5 to 7 days after ovulation, which for a lot of people, they were never told that before. They were told, oh, you're here today on a Tuesday, let's just go ahead and draw your hormones. Meanwhile, nobody's asked you where you are in your cycle. You want to test in what we call the luteal phase, so 5 to 7 days after ovulation. If you are about a 28-day person, from period to period, you're about 28 days, generally you will test days 19, 20, or 21. So that's first and foremost, get your timing right. Then you can get a blood draw. You can do like an estradiol and a progesterone in blood. I do prefer a Dutch test. I am a little biased having worked for them. I don't work for them anymore, but I do like the test because the test gives us these breakdown products called metabolites. And a metabolite tells me where your hormone is going. So you make an estrogen, like estradiol we've been talking about. Where does it go? And not all the pathways are that healthy or that helpful to the body. So I want to know where we're going so I can help optimize it. When estrogen gets broken down, one of the pathways that it can go through is called methylation. And a lot of people have heard of methylation probably because of MTHFR and folate, and they freak out. I have MTHFR. But actually, what we're going to talk about is another enzyme called COMT, catechol O methyltransferase. Now, here's why it's important for histamine. That methyltransferase, that COMT, uses the same cofactors that one of the enzymes that histamine gets broken down by, HNMT. So histamine and methyltransferase. So they use the same cofactors. So if you're struggling in the cofactor department, or if you're struggling with estrogen, or you're focused on estrogen, then histamine gets left behind and circulates around the body, and vice versa. If histamine's taking all the cofactors and histamine's getting broken down, then estrogen gets left behind and estrogen circulates around the body. So I want to see what that's doing so that I know as a methyltransferase, we can support it. So what are the cofactors? The big ones: magnesium. Magnesium is the main cofactor. Zinc can be used as a backup. A lot of your methyl B vitamins, so methylfolate, methyl B12, your methyl B6, right? These B vitamins are super helpful. Phosphatidylcholine. So choline is prevalent in like eggs, as an example, egg yolks. And so choline can be really helpful. There is another nutrient called trimethylglycine, TMG, super helpful. Methionine, super helpful. Now, for a lot of people, they're like, oh my gosh, these words are going over my head. Just focus on magnesium. Focus on magnesium and maybe a bit of zinc, because I would argue, and you may or may not agree, a lot of people are probably kind of deficient in magnesium, and especially in immune system stuff, they're deficient in zinc as well. And as those are the two main minerals that do the job, and humans tend to be deficient in minerals, those can be really helpful on that. So I do that testing because I want to gauge like what's your estrogen doing, and then I can kind of extrapolate it to know like what is histamine doing. And if I can get estrogen back into a good rhythm, meaning I can get it to fire off at the right part of the cycle, when it's supposed to be a mountaintop or when it's supposed to be a bunny hill. And if I can get it to go through what we call like the garbage system, the like get rid of it out of the body system, your detox system, then I know it's only going to beneficially impact histamine as well. Because if estrogen's super happy, Goldilocks, it's just too, it's just right as opposed to too big or too small, then histamine is going to be very, very similar. Now, obviously, there are a lot of antihistamine supplements or medications. And I will touch on one prominent one because we hear about it a lot in estrogen, and that is quercetin. So quercetin with a Q. Quercetin helps your estrogen's detoxification. So it does help your estrogen go down the right pathway in the beginning. So it's a healthier, more helpful pathway. The problem is quercetin can slow down the second part. So if you're like, if you're trying to get out of the house and you like go out of your bedroom, so you walk through that door and then like you like try to walk out the front door. So quercetin will help open your bedroom door, but it will close the door to the outside. And so with estrogen can get out of the bedroom, but then it's still in the house. It can't get out the front door. So we have to do a little bit more additional of that. Again, magnesium or zinc or a methyl B complex of some sort. And that will help open the front door so then estrogen can get out and go away. And so we like quercetin for the histamine part, because it's an antihistamine. But I do have a lot of women that say to me, oh my gosh, I take so much quercetin in allergy season, and March, April, May, June, and my PMS is the worst. I'm like, well, it could be the histamine, but quercetin also keeps the front door shut. So let's support that more specifically for estrogen and help get it out. And so it's kind of a lot of information, but I do want people to know that there are definitely things you can do.
No, and we can link all of those. So that way, if someone's looking for them, we can link that in the summit resources so people can go find them. And you brought up like so many good points there. And one of which is that so I'm someone who my genetics is not happy with in processing histamine. So
Yep.
I, from an early age, had a lot of histamine issues, which, really is one of the things that drew me into this, because I have to always work on those pathways. But there can be genetic variants, but what you're saying, which is what we know, is that even if you have these genetics that are setting you up to metabolize certain ways, we can change that.
Yes, it's change and support, which is what I love. And so that one histamine genetic, the HNMT, again, anything MT is methyltransferase, COMT, methyltransferase. And basically what they do is they take a methyl donor and they transfer it onto a thing. They transfer it onto histamine. They transfer it onto estrogen. And the whole point of that is to get it out. It's part of the like, goodbye now, thank you, goodbye now, you need to go. Here's your card to go away, like go out the kidneys or go out the stool, etc. And so we have over 200 methyltransferases in our body. We're just talking about 2 today. And so these methyltransferases, if any of them are struggling, or if you're deficient in any of those nutrients that I mentioned, the magnesium, the zinc, the methyl B vitamins, the choline, et cetera, it's going to affect all your methyltransferases. So it's totally possible your histamine is not necessarily because of again, these genetics that break histamine down, but could also be because you have other methyltransferases that are sucking up all the resources, and histamine and estrogen kind of get what's left over, and that's not fair. So we can definitely make these changes. And again, I mentioned the supplement part because I know this summit is so good and I know the speakers are so wonderful. There are a lot of lifestyle suggestions in a lot of the talks. And since I'm specifically focused on estrogen, instead of repeating what's already been repeated with all the lifestyle stuff, I'm just going to stick sort of what's like pretty key for estrogen and histamine. And so, but to know that if you have other methyltransferase issues, just supporting will actually support all 200 of them. And that's wonderful. We can now get all the cogs on the clock turning at the same time. Now with estrogen too, we do want to be aware, we can't necessarily test for them per se, but even estrogenic chemicals do play a role. So your own estrogen may be a-okay, but if you are swimming in parabens and phthalate and synthetic fragrance and plastics, which is part of that, et cetera, from your detergent and your skincare and your makeup and, the candle you burn and the plug-in you have, the plastic you're eating out of, that acts estrogenic. Those are what are called the endocrine disrupting family of chemicals. And estrogen, your ovaries, sit in the endocrine system. So if you disrupt that system, you're going to get symptoms, and it's also going to affect your histamine. And so something as easy as, switching to glass and stainless steel or porcelain for your cooking, your storing, your drinking, looking at your ingredients for your skincare, your detergent, being real mindful of those candles, or just don't even use those plugins. Like, come on, just these little baby steps can be a huge deal for taking, again, the water out of the bucket of the estrogen bucket. And so not only is detoxification important, both for histamine and estrogen, but we just like consciously, what are you adding into the bucket at the same time? And what can we do to reduce that load?
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you feel overwhelmed, just take one product at a time and
One
just
product at a
take,
time. Yep.
because I think sometimes people are like, well, what do I do? I have to change everything. And maybe it's expensive, but if you do one product at a time and really think about that new product, then eventually it's going to be all cleaned up.
And I've been doing this, I don't know how long you've been doing this, but I've been doing this wellness thing for 24 years. So I tell people, I'm in my 24th chapter of my book. And if this is your first exposure ever, so that means you're in chapter 1, like, please don't compare yourself to how far I've come. I did not do all the things, buy all the things in, 24 years ago. Like, it's taken me 24 years of work to get where I'm at, make the changes from top to bottom, everything from either like air filters and water filters, my mattress. I did not buy that stuff in the beginning. I started with products like, okay, I'm out of detergent, new detergent. Okay, I'm out of deodorant, new deodorant. Okay, I'm like, let's find a clean makeup company and go from there. Let's find a clean skincare and go from there. Like all right, candles, no more of the really popular super scented, no more plugins. Now everything it's essential oils and, healthier and trying to reduce that risk. Like,
Yes.
And just one at a time, I'm such a big fan of. Don't go broke and don't stress yourself out because stress only adds to the bucket.
Yes.
But
Yeah,
it will be
totally.
helpful.
Yes. I read like it was about that same time, about 24 years ago. I read my first book about toxins and all in the products. And I actually had to put it down and just like set it aside for a month. I was just like, okay, this feels so overwhelming and I can't like bring it all. Like, how do I even start? And I just set it aside. And then I came back to it and was like, okay, where do I start? Like, what's that one thing you can do? And if you keep doing that,
Yeah.
you get to the point. Now, the one other thing a lot of women have is low progesterone. So how do you
Yes.
see that kind of playing into this overall picture too?
Oh my goodness. And so progesterone and estrogen are best friends. They need each other and they come out dominantly at different parts of your cycle. And so your estrogen is really pretty dominant before you ovulate. And then after you ovulate or release the egg, whether you're trying to get pregnant or not, it doesn't matter. But when you'll still ovulate, hopefully, and then you make a boatload. You make like 2 mountaintops worth of progesterone. You actually make more progesterone than you do estrogen in your body in that second half. And so it's a relative sort of ratio between the two. Do you have epically high levels of progesterone and then bunny hill levels of estrogen? That's typical. That's what you should have. If that's out of balance at all, if you are not ovulating, therefore you don't make progesterone, or if your factories are not making progesterone that well, so you're making pretty low levels of progesterone, now you're out of ratio, you're out of balance. And what we call it, you will often see it referred to as estrogen dominance. Really what we're referring to, it's a longer statement that we shorten. So we're saying, like, in the second half of your cycle, in the luteal phase, your estrogen is winning sort of relative to your progesterone. And so you feel these symptoms and they're kind of the same. Higher estrogen and lower progesterone are the same. So when progesterone is low, then because of this imbalance of estrogen, it's going to affect your histamine as well. So studies have shown when you have really great, healthy, wonderful levels of progesterone, that actually can help keep estrogen in check and therefore also keep histamine in check as well. Now, what happens is if we don't ovulate, we call it an anovulatory cycle, which is common in like PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. It is common in perimenopause. It's common for a lot of reasons. I'm not saying it's normal, but it is common. These women tend to feel more histamine symptoms because they don't have that countermeasure of progesterone floating around in big levels in their body, and estrogen seems to maybe run wild, to be a good analogy, and allow histamine to do its thing, and vice versa. Then histamine gets higher and tells the ovary factory, hey, make more estrogen, so it does. And so there's no progesterone there to sort of referee or police the situation. And so even just supporting progesterone in these women, getting them to ovulate again, figuring out why they're not ovulating, or maybe they're at an age they need progesterone, bioidentical, body identical progesterone, that alone might make a big difference in their histamine symptoms because now you're getting them that progesterone back again.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all you have shared, such great information. I know this is an interest for so many women and that are really out there. I think a lot more women are having this issue than even realize that they are when it comes to the hormones and the histamines and all of these connections. Can you tell our audience where they can find you?
Absolutely. I am at drcarriejones.com and I am on social media as the same. So Instagram, dr.carriejones. And I am dipping my toe into TikTok, Dr. Carrie Jones, and would love to teach more about hormones over there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And her Instagram account is great. It's educational and funny and fun. So go over and check it out. Thanks for joining us today, Carrie.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to Doctor Talks. We hope today's episode has enlightened and inspired you on your path to optimal health. Each day is a new opportunity to make choices that empower your well-being. For more insights and strategies, subscribe to our podcast and visit our website, www.drtalks.com. Stay connected, stay healthy, and join us next time on Doctor Talks, real talks from real doctors on the issues that matter to you most.